Kang Minho walked through the massive halls of Nexus Prime, his blue skin reflecting the soft lights that lined the walls. The Galactic Council building was huge, bigger than any city on his home world. Today felt different, though. Today he would ask the question that had been bothering him for years. The main council room was already full when he arrived. Hundreds of different beings sat in their assigned seats. Some had fur, others had scales, and a few looked like walking trees. The air was thick with the sounds of different languages being translated by the machines built into each seat. Minho took his place at the Veltari Federation table. His assistant, a young female named Park Suna, was already there with her data, pad ready. She worked for the Zephyrian Trade Group, but they often helped each other during these big meetings. "Did you bring the charts?" Minho asked her quietly. Suna nodded and pulled up a hologram between them. It showed a three-dimensional map of known space. Most of it was colored in different shades to show which species controlled which areas. But there was one large section that remained completely gray. "Human territory," she whispered. Still nothing. The meeting started with the usual boring talk about trade agreements and shipping routes. Minho waited patiently, watching the clock on the wall. Finally, when there was a break in the discussion, he stood up. "I have a question that needs an answer," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. The room became quiet. The head of the council, a tall being with 6 arms, gestured for him to continue. "What happened to the humans?" Minho asked. Several council members started talking at once. Some laughed, others looked confused. The 6-armed leader raised 2 of his hands for silence. "Ambassador Minho, the humans chose isolation. We have discussed this many times before." "But that was 400 years ago," Minho replied. "No species has contacted them since. No one has even tried to visit their space. Why?" An old being, covered in gray fur, stood up slowly. "Because it is forbidden," she said, in a voice that sounded like wind through leaves. "Forbidden by whom?" Minho pressed. "The humans never said we could not visit. They just set borders and asked us to respect them." Suna stood up next to him, her data pad glowing with information. "I have been studying trade routes for 10 years, she said. "Human space contains some of the richest systems in the galaxy. Rare metals, energy sources, perfect planets for farming. Yet no one trades with them. No one even talks about trading with them. Because they are dead," said a representative from the Korth Empire. His voice was harsh and grating. "Obviously, the humans died out long ago. Why else would they be so quiet?" "Then why not check?" Minho asked. "Why not send a simple probe to see?" The room became uncomfortable. Beings shifted in their seats and looked away. The 6-armed leader cleared his throat. "There have been attempts," he said slowly. "Ships have approached the human border over the years. None have reported back." "What do you mean?" Suna asked, her voice getting higher. "What happened to the ships?" "Nothing happened to them," said another council member. "They just turned around. The captains always said they changed their minds. They said it did not feel right to continue." Minho felt a chill run down his spine. "All of them? Every single ship that tried to enter human space just turned around?" The old gray-furred being nodded slowly. "Even the most curious explorers, even the bravest warriors. They get close to the border and suddenly decide they have better things to do." Lee Dong-yun had been quiet during the whole discussion. He was an astral navigator, one of the best deep space explorers in the galaxy. His people were known for going where others feared to travel. Now he stood up, his face pale. "I tried once," he said quietly. "About 20 years ago. I was young and stupid and thought I could be the first to make contact with humans again." Every eye in the room turned to him. Even the translation machines seemed to listen more carefully. "I got within 2 light years of their border," Dong-yun continued. "My ship's sensors started acting strange. The navigation system kept trying to plot courses away from human space. Then the communication array began picking up signals. What kind of signals? Minho asked. Nothing I could understand. But they felt important. Like they were trying to tell me something. The closer I got to the border, the stronger the feeling became. It was not fear, exactly. It was more like... He paused, searching for the right words. Like I was walking toward something too big for me to understand. Suna leaned forward. What did you do? I turned around. Dongyun said simply, just like all the others. Even now, talking about it, I feel like I should not have gone that close. The room was completely silent now. Even the air recycling systems seemed to have stopped making noise. But satellite images show activity, Suna said, pulling up new data on her pad. Look at these pictures from the edge of human space. The hologram changed to show long-range telescope images. Planets with cities that sparkled like jewels. Massive structures floating in space that were clearly artificial. Ships moving between worlds in organized patterns. They are definitely still there, Suna continued. And they are definitely alive. Their civilization looks more advanced than ever. Then why do they not contact us? Asked the Korth representative. Maybe the question is why we do not contact them, Minho said slowly. He walked to the center of the room where everyone could see him clearly. Think about it. 400 years ago, humans were friendly. They helped solve disputes between species. They shared their knowledge and asked for little in return. Then they said they needed to focus on their own development and asked for privacy. So? Asked several council members at once. So we gave them privacy. More privacy than they asked for. We gave them complete isolation. And now we act like their space is cursed or something. The six-armed leader looked uncomfortable. Are you suggesting we send another mission? I am suggesting we ask ourselves why we have not, Minho replied. What is it about human space that makes every explorer turn around? What is it about humans that makes us avoid them so completely? Suna was studying her datapad again. There is something else, she said. I have been looking at birth rates and population growth across the galaxy. Every species has been growing steadily for the past 400 years, except near human space. What do you mean? Donghyun asked. Species with territories close to human borders have much lower population growth. Not because they are dying, but because fewer children are being born. It is like they do not feel the need to expand in that direction. The implications of her words settled over the room like a heavy blanket. If what she was saying was true, then human space was not just avoided by explorers and traders. It was avoided by entire civilizations on an unconscious level. This is ridiculous, the Korth representative said loudly. You are talking about humans like they are some kind of mythical beings. They are just another species that chose to hide from the galaxy. Then prove it, Minho said. Send a ship, make contact, find out what happened to them. And if the ship turns around like all the others, then we will know something is very wrong, Minho replied. And we will need to figure out what it is. The council meeting ended without any decisions being made. But as the representatives filed out of the chamber, many of them were talking quietly among themselves. The question of human space had been raised, and now it could not be ignored. Minho walked back to his quarters with Suna and Dongyun. None of them spoke until they were alone. You know what the strangest part is? Dongyun said finally. What? Suna asked. In all my years of space travel, I have never met anyone who has actually tried to enter human space. Everyone talks about ships that turned around, but no one can name a specific captain or crew. It is like the whole galaxy just agreed to stay away without anyone actually deciding to do it. Minho looked out the window at the stars beyond Nexus Prime. Somewhere out there, humans were living their lives in complete isolation from the rest of the galaxy. The question was whether they had chosen that isolation or whether something else entirely was keeping everyone away. I think, he said slowly, we are about to find out the truth. whether we want to or not. 3 months after the council meeting, Park Suna stood on the bridge of her ship, the Swift Current. Around her, 5 other Zephyrian vessels waited in formation at the edge of known space. Beyond them lay the invisible border of human territory. Suna had spent weeks convincing her government to approve this mission. The Zephyrian Trade Federation was always looking for new opportunities, and the resources in human space were too valuable to ignore forever. Her argument was simple. If humans were dead, the territory was free for claiming. If they were alive, trade could benefit everyone. "Are you sure about this?" asked Kim Tae-won from his position at the communication station. His hands were shaking slightly as he checked the equipment for the 3rd time. "The galaxy has wondered about this for 400 years, Suna replied. "Someone has to find out the truth." Dr. Choi Ji-woo looked up from her science station. As the mission's xenobiologist, she was responsible for studying any life forms they might encounter. "All sensors are working perfectly. If there are humans in there, we will find them." Suna took a deep breath and activated the fleet communication system. "All ships, this is Swift Current. We are about to cross into human territory. Remember, we are explorers, not invaders. We go in peace." 5 captain voices acknowledged her message. Then, together, the 6 ships moved forward across the invisible line that separated the known galaxy from human space. At first, nothing seemed different. The stars looked the same. Space was just as empty, and their instruments showed normal readings. Tae-hwan was monitoring communication frequencies, hoping to pick up human signals. "Anything?" Suna asked after an hour of travel. "Nothing yet," he replied. "But the communication equipment is working better than usual. It is picking up signals I have never seen before." They continued deeper into human space, jumping from system to system. Each new location brought amazing discoveries. The first system they explored had 3 planets, all of them covered in cities that glowed with soft light. The cities were not built on the ground like normal settlements. Instead, they floated in the atmosphere like giant soap bubbles. "How is that possible?" asked Captain Yoon from the 2nd ship. Dr. Ji-woo was studying the readings with excitement. "The energy signatures are incredible. Those cities are using power sources we do not understand. They should not be able to float like that." The next system was even more strange. The planets were covered in what looked like forests, but the trees were perfectly geometric. Each one was exactly the same height and distance from its neighbors. From space, the entire planet looked like a giant work of art. "There are definitely people down there," Ji-woo reported. "I am reading millions of life signs, but they are not just human life signs." "What do you mean?" Suna asked. "I mean there are dozens of different species living on those planets. Some I recognize from the Galactic database. Others I have never seen before." As they moved through system after system, the discoveries became more and more incredible. Space stations the size of small moons orbited gas giants, harvesting energy directly from the planetary atmospheres. Asteroid belts had been turned into massive construction projects, with materials being shaped by some invisible force. But the most amazing thing was that everything worked together perfectly. The space stations provided power to the floating cities. The geometric forests produced materials that were somehow transported to the construction sites. It was like watching a machine the size of an entire star system. "This is impossible," Tae-hwan said, staring at his instruments. "The coordination required for this kind of operation, no species could manage it." "Maybe that's the point," Suna said quietly. "Maybe humans are not just one species anymore." On the 5th day of their journey, something changed. Suna woke up feeling different. Her mind felt clearer, like someone had cleaned dust off a window. Problems that had seemed complicated yesterday now had obvious solutions. Tae-won noticed it too. "I have been having the strangest dreams," he told her at breakfast. "Not nightmares, but dreams where I understand things I never understood before." Dr. Jiwoo was excited about the change. Our brain scans show increased activity in areas associated with problem-solving and pattern recognition. Whatever is happening, to us, it is making us smarter. Is it dangerous? Suna asked. I do not think so. If anything, we are becoming more capable. Watch this. Jiwoo sat down at a mathematical puzzle that had been unsolved in the ship's computer for years. Within minutes, she had worked out the answer. I could not have done that a week ago, she said with wonder. The changes were happening to the crews of all 6 ships. They were thinking faster, seeing patterns more clearly, and working together better than ever before. Tasks that used to take hours were completed in minutes. But the changes also brought questions. Suna found herself lying awake at night thinking about things she had never considered before. What was the purpose of their exploration? What did they really hope to achieve? Were they ready for whatever they might find? On the 7th day, Taewon detected something new on his sensors. There is a structure approaching us, he announced. It is big, really big. The main screen showed a shape moving through space toward their fleet. It was not a ship in any sense they understood. It looked more like a living creature, with smooth curves and surfaces that seemed to shift and flow like water. It is beautiful, Jiwoo whispered. Suna had to agree. The approaching structure was not threatening or alien. Despite being unlike anything she had ever seen, it felt familiar somehow, like something she had been expecting without knowing it. Are there life signs? She asked. Yes, Jiwoo replied. Multiple life signs. Some human, some other. The structure slowed as it approached their fleet, then stopped a comfortable distance away. Suna could see sections of it that were clearly designed for docking with other ships. They want us to come aboard, Taewon said, checking his instruments. I am receiving a signal. It is not in any language, but somehow I understand it. They are inviting us to meet. Suna looked around her bridge. Her crew was waiting for her decision. The smart thing would be to maintain distance and try to communicate from their ships. But something inside her, something that had been growing, stronger each day in human space, told her to accept the invitation. Prepare a shuttle, she ordered. Taewon, Jiwoo, you are with me. We are going to meet our hosts. As they flew their small shuttle toward the living structure, Suna felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. They were about to make first contact with humans after 400 years of silence. But the humans they were about to meet might be very different from the ones the galaxy remembered. The shuttle was guided into a docking bay that formed around it like the structure was reshaping itself to accommodate their ship. As they stepped out, Suna was surprised to find that the air was breathable and the gravity was comfortable. A figure approached them from deeper inside the structure. It was clearly human in basic shape, but there was something more about it. The human moved with a grace that seemed to ignore normal physical limitations, and there was a sense of awareness in its eyes that felt vast and deep. Welcome, the human said in perfect Zephyrian language. We have been waiting for you to arrive. You knew we were coming? Suna asked. The human smiled, and somehow that simple expression contained more warmth and understanding than Suna had ever experienced. We knew someone would come eventually, the human replied. The galaxy's curiosity was bound to overcome its caution sooner or later. The question is whether you are ready for what you are going to learn. Suna felt that her life was about to change in ways she could not imagine. The enhanced thinking she had experienced over the past week was just the beginning. Looking into the human's eyes, she realized that her species had been living as children, and they were about to meet the adults. My name is Park Suna, she said formally. We come seeking knowledge and friendship. I know who you are, the human replied gently. And I know why you came. My name is Nam Hayok, and I am here to help you understand what humans have become. But first, You need to understand what you are becoming. The words sent a chill through Suna's body. What did Hemin be what they were becoming? And why did she have the feeling that there was no going back from whatever was about to happen? Nam Hyuk led them through corridors that seemed to pulse with gentle light. The walls were smooth and warm to the touch, and Suna had the strange feeling that the structure was alive and aware of their presence. "Your ship," she said, looking around in wonder. "It is not built, is it?" "Grown," Nam Hyuk replied with a smile. "We learned long ago that the best technology works with life, not against it. This vessel and I have been partners for over a century." "A century?" Dr. Jiwoo asked, studying Nam Hyuk's face. "But you look so young." "Time moves differently when you understand what you really are," he said simply. They entered a large chamber with curved walls that showed images of space around them. It was like standing inside a soap bubble, with stars and planets visible in every direction. Another human was waiting for them, a woman with kind eyes and an expression of deep wisdom. "This is Young Mirai," Nam Hyuk said. "She specializes in helping visitors understand what they are experiencing." Young Mirai approached them with the same flowing movement that Nam Hyuk had shown. When she spoke, her voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "You have been in our space for 7 days," she said. "How do you feel?" Suna thought about the question. "Different, clearer, like I have been asleep and am starting to wake up." "That is exactly what is happening," Jung Mirai replied. "The question is whether you want to wake up completely." Taewon stepped forward nervously. "What do you mean? What is happening to us?" Nam Hyuk gestured to comfortable seats that seemed to grow from the floor. As they sat down, the chamber around them filled with soft music that felt like it was coming from their own minds. 400 years ago, Nam Hyuk began, humans made a discovery that changed everything. We found out that consciousness is not just something that happens in brains. It is a force in the universe, like gravity or electromagnetism. "That is impossible," Jiwoo said. "Consciousness is just electrical activity in neural tissue." "Is it?" Young Mirai asked gently. "Then explain what has been happening to you since you entered our space. Your brains have not changed physically, but your thinking has improved dramatically." Suna felt a chill as she realized the woman was right. Their enhanced abilities had nothing to do with their biology. "We call it the awakening," Nam Hyuk continued. "When consciousness is properly understood and developed, it can affect reality directly, not through technology but through focused awareness." To demonstrate, he held up his hand. The air above his palm began to glow, then formed into a small flower made of pure light. The flower was beautiful and complex, with petals that moved, in a breeze that did not exist. "This is not a machine or a trick," he said, as the flower dissolved back into light. "This is consciousness directly shaping matter and energy." Taewon was shaking his head. "That violates every law of physics No, Young Mirai said. "It reveals laws of physics you have not discovered yet. Your science has been studying the universe from the outside, like looking at a painting. We learned to study it from the inside, as part of the painting itself." She showed them recordings of early human experiments, volunteers sitting in meditation, their brain activity monitored by machines. As they reached deeper states of awareness, the monitors showed impossible readings, energy levels that should not exist, patterns that suggested their consciousness was connecting to something much larger. "The first successful awakening happened by accident," Nam Hyuk explained. "A research team was studying consciousness when their equipment malfunctioned. Instead of shutting down, it amplified the subject's awareness far beyond normal levels. The recording showed a woman sitting peacefully while surrounded by floating objects. She was not touching them, but they moved in response to her thoughts. She could manipulate matter with her mind?" Suna asked. Not exactly, young Mirai replied. She had learned to work with the consciousness that exists in all matter. Everything in the universe is aware at some level. Rocks, water, even empty, space. The awakening process teaches you to communicate with that awareness. More recordings showed the development of human abilities over the decades. People learning to heal injuries by convincing cells to repair themselves faster. Others, growing plants by encouraging their consciousness to expand. Some working together to build the massive structures Suna's fleet had observed. But why hide this from the galaxy? Jiwoo asked. Think of how much suffering you could prevent, how many problems you could solve. Nam Hyok's expression became sad. Because awakening cannot be forced. It must be chosen freely, and the person must be ready for the change. What do you mean? Suna asked. Jung Mirai activated another recording. This one showed a human trying to awaken a volunteer from another species. At first, everything seemed fine. The subject showed signs of enhanced awareness and improved thinking. But then something went wrong. Forced awakening creates instability, she explained as they watched the subject become confused and frightened. The person gains abilities they cannot understand or control. In the worst cases, they lose their sense of self entirely. So you chose isolation to protect other species, Taewon said. And to protect ourselves, Nam Hyok added. An awakened human experiences the emotions of unawakened beings as physical pain. Being around suffering becomes almost unbearable. We had to choose between helping the galaxy and losing our sanity. Suna was beginning to understand the terrible choice humans had faced. So you created your territory as a buffer zone. Exactly. Close enough to monitor the galaxy, far enough to avoid triggering unwanted awakenings. The effect you have been experiencing is very mild compared to what happens near our core worlds. But some beings do choose to awaken, Jiwoo observed. Jung Mirai nodded. Over the centuries, explorers like yourselves have found their way to us. Some choose to complete the process. Others return home. But they carry a subtle change that discourages others from following them. Is that why no species wants to explore human space? Suna asked. Because the few who tried came back? Different? Not different enough to seem alien to their own people, Nam Hyok explained, but different enough to make the idea of exploring human space feel unnecessary or unimportant. Taewon was studying his hands, which were beginning to show a faint glow similar to what Nam Hyok had demonstrated. What is happening to us right now? You are approaching the first threshold, Jung Mirai said gently. Your consciousness is expanding beyond the normal limits of your species. Soon you will have to choose. Choose what? Suna asked, though she was afraid she already knew the answer. Whether to complete the awakening or return home, Nam Hyok replied. But you should know that returning will not make you the same as you were. You will always be partially awakened, never quite fitting in with your own people. And if we choose to complete it, then you become something more than what you were, but also something that can never go back to being what you were. Suna looked at her companions. Taewon was staring at his glowing hands with wonder and fear. Jiwoo was taking readings with her equipment, trying to understand the impossible things she was seeing. How long do we have to decide? Suna asked. Not long, Jung Mirai said softly. The process has already begun. Within days, you will either complete the awakening or stabilize at a partially awakened state. Either way, you will be changed forever. Nam. Hyok stood up and walked to one of the curved walls. With a gesture, he made it transparent, showing them the view outside. Suna could see her fleet in the distance, the other ships waiting for her return. Your crews are experiencing the same changes, he said. They are looking to you for guidance. Whatever you decide will affect all of them. Why did you let us get this far? Suna asked. You could have turned us away like all the others. Because the galaxy is running out of time, young Mirai replied. Multiple species are facing extinction. Resources are running low. Wars are starting. That could destroy entire civilizations. We can no longer justify our isolation when intervention might save billions of lives. So you are considering revealing yourselves to the galaxy? We are considering offering a choice, Nam Hayek said. The same choice we are offering you. Some beings will choose to awaken. Others will choose to remain as they are. Both choices will be respected. Suna felt the weight of the decision pressing down on her. She was not just choosing for herself, but potentially for her entire species. The enhanced awareness she had been experiencing made her realize how much suffering existed in the galaxy, how much could be prevented if consciousness itself could be evolved. But she also understood the terrible risk. If the awakening process went wrong, if beings were not ready for the change, the results could be catastrophic. Can we see what full awakening looks like? She asked. Young Mirai smiled. Are you sure you want to know? Once you see what you could become, it becomes much harder to choose to remain what you are. Suna looked at her companions one more time. Taewan nodded nervously. Jiwoo was practically vibrating with curiosity. Show us, Suna said, and Young Mirai began to change. Young Mirai closed her eyes and took a deep breath. When she opened them again, they were filled with swirling galaxies of light. Her entire body began to glow with the same soft radiance they had seen in Nam Hyuk's demonstration, but much stronger. The air around her shimmered, and suddenly Suna could sense Young Mirai's thoughts and emotions as clearly as her own. But more than that, she could feel the woman's awareness extending outward, touching every part of the living ship, reaching toward the distant stars, connecting with consciousness throughout the universe. This is what full awakening feels like, Young Mirai said, though her lips did not move. Her voice came directly into their minds. Complete connection with the consciousness that flows through all things. Taewan gasped as he felt Young Mirai's awareness brush against his mind. It was not intrusive or frightening. It felt like being welcomed home by someone who understood him completely. The loneliness stops, Young Mirai continued. When you awaken fully, you realize that you were never alone. Every star, every planet, every living being is part of the same vast consciousness. You feel their joy and their pain as your own. Dr. Jiwoo was taking readings frantically, but her instruments could not measure what they were experiencing. The energy readings are off the scale, she whispered. But it is not harmful energy. It feels loving. Another figure entered the chamber. This was clearly not human, though it had a roughly humanoid shape. Its skin was purple with silver markings, and it moved with the same flowing grace that the awakened humans showed. This is Ko Jiho, Nam Hyuk said. He was once a member of the Astral Navigator Guild, like your friend Lee Dong-yun. He chose to complete the awakening process 5 years ago. Ko Jiho approached them with a smile that radiated warmth and understanding. When he spoke, his voice carried harmonics that seemed to resonate in their bones. I remember being where you are now, he said gently, afraid of losing who I was, but curious about who I could become. Do you regret your choice? Suna asked. How can I regret becoming more than I ever dreamed possible? Ko Jiho replied, but I will not lie to you. The person I was before the awakening is gone, not dead, but transformed so completely that I can barely remember thinking the way I used to think. He demonstrated his abilities by reaching out toward a section of the chamber wall. At his touch, the wall began to reshape itself, flowing like water but maintaining its strength. Within moments, he had created a beautiful sculpture of their home galaxy, complete with moving points of light representing the stars. Matter responds to awakened consciousness because matter itself is conscious, he explained. When you understand this, Shaping physical reality becomes as easy as shaping your thoughts. But as impressive as the demonstration was, Suna found herself more affected by the sense of peace that radiated from Kojiho. He had no fear, no anger, no stress. He existed in a state of complete harmony with everything around him. The downside, young Mirai said, her form returning to normal, is that you can never go back to seeing the universe as separate objects bumping into each other. You become aware of the pain and suffering of all conscious beings. Sometimes the weight of that awareness is almost too much to bear. Another human entered the chamber. This one looked older and carried himself with the dignity of a philosopher. Nam Hyuk introduced him as Yoon Seo-jin. I study the ethical implications of awakening, Yoon Seo-jin said as he joined their group. For centuries, we have debated whether we have the right to keep this knowledge to ourselves. What did you decide? Taewon asked. That forced awakening is a form of murder, Yoon Seo-jin replied seriously. It kills the person they were to create the person they become. Even if the result is superior in every measurable way, it is still the elimination of one consciousness to create another. But voluntary awakening is different, Ko Ji-ho added. When someone chooses the transformation with full understanding of what they are giving up and what they will gain, it becomes an act of self-creation rather than destruction. Suna felt the changes in her own mind accelerating. Colors were becoming more vivid, sounds carried more meaning, and she could sense the emotional states of everyone around her. Most disturbing of all, she was beginning to feel the consciousness of the ship itself, vast and ancient and utterly alien to her previous understanding of what it meant to be alive. How much time do we have? She asked urgently. A few hours, at most, young Mirai replied. Your consciousness is approaching the point where it must either complete the transformation or stabilize at a partially awakened state. What happens if we choose partial awakening? You return to your people as bridges between the awakened and unawakened, Nam Hyuk explained. You will be more capable than you were, but still recognizably yourselves. However, you will never be fully satisfied with normal existence again. You will always know there is more. And if we choose full awakening, you become like us, Ko Ji-ho said simply. More than you were, but no longer able to relate to who you were. Yoon Seo-jin activated a holographic display showing the galaxy. This is why the choice matters beyond your personal transformation. The galaxy is approaching a crisis point. Multiple species are developing weapons that could destroy entire star systems. Resource wars are beginning that could last for millennia. Climate change is threatening dozens of worlds. We could prevent all of this, young Mirai said quietly. Awakened consciousness can solve any problem, heal any damage, prevent any conflict, but only if enough beings choose to awaken voluntarily. How many would be enough? Ji-woo asked. 1% of the galactic population, Nam Hyuk replied. That would provide enough awakened consciousness to guide the development of the rest, without forcing change on anyone. Suna realized the true scope of what they were being offered. Not just personal transformation, but the chance to help save the galaxy from its own destructive tendencies. But there are risks, Yoon Seo-jin continued. If awakening spreads too quickly, if beings are not properly prepared, the result could be chaos. Partially awakened individuals with unstable consciousness could be more dangerous than any weapon. Taewon was staring at his hands, which were now glowing steadily. I can feel it happening, he said in wonder. My mind is expanding. I can sense things I never knew existed. The process is accelerating for all of you, Ko Ji-ho observed. Soon you will have to choose. Dr. Ji-woo was practically vibrating with excitement and fear. The implications for science, for medicine, for everything we know about the universe. If consciousness is truly fundamental, then we have been approaching everything backward. What about our crews? Suna asked, thinking of the other ships, waiting in space. They are experiencing the same acceleration, Nam Hyuk replied. Whatever you choose, they will follow. That is the burden of leadership in situations like this. Suna closed her eyes and tried to think clearly, but her enhanced awareness made it impossible to ignore the vast web of consciousness that surrounded them. She could feel the living ship's ancient wisdom, the deep peace of the awakened humans, the excited confusion of her companions, and the patient waiting of her crew members on the distant ships. More than that, she could sense something else. A darkness growing at the edges of the galaxy. The wars and conflicts that Yoon Seojin had mentioned were not distant possibilities. They were already beginning, spreading like a poison through the consciousness of unawakened beings. "I can feel it," she whispered. "The suffering that is coming. How can we choose to remain ignorant when we know what could be prevented?" "Because choosing awakening to prevent suffering is still a choice made from fear," Young Mirai said gently. "True awakening must come from love, from the desire to become more, not from the desire to fix what is broken." "Then what do we choose?" Taewon asked desperately. Suna opened her eyes and looked at each of her companions. Taewon, brilliant, and frightened but determined to do what was right. Jiwoo, consumed with curiosity about the universe's hidden secrets, and herself, caught between the leader she had been and the being she could become. "We choose," she said slowly, "to trust ourselves, to trust that we can handle whatever comes next." She turned to Young Mirai. "What exactly happens during full awakening? Your consciousness expands to encompass not just your individual mind, but your connection to the universal consciousness that flows through all things. You gain abilities that seem magical, but are actually natural consequences of understanding reality correctly. Most importantly, you become incapable of causing harm to other conscious beings." "Incapable?" Jiwoo asked. "When you feel the pain of others as your own pain, when you understand that all consciousness is connected, harming others becomes literally impossible. It would be like deliberately injuring yourself." Ko Jiho nodded. "This is why awakened beings cannot solve the galaxy's problems by force. We cannot even consider violence as an option." Suna felt the moment of decision arriving like a wave rushing toward shore. Her consciousness was expanding rapidly now, and she had to choose what to do with the flood of awareness that was threatening to overwhelm her individual identity. "I choose awakening," she said firmly. "Full awakening. For myself and for what I might be able to give to the galaxy. And I choose to go back," Taewon said quietly. "Someone needs to prepare our people for what is coming." 6 months later, Park Suna stood before the Galactic Council again. But everything had changed. She looked the same as before, mostly. A few people noticed that her eyes seemed deeper somehow and that she moved with unusual grace. But she was still recognizably the Zephyrian trade coordinator who had asked uncomfortable questions about human space. The council chamber was packed. Word had spread that Suna had returned from human territory with answers to the 400-year-old mystery. Representatives from every major species had come to hear what she had learned. Kang Minho, who had started the whole investigation, sat in his usual place looking nervous and excited. Lee Dong-hyun was there too, along with dozens of other deep space explorers who had always wondered about the Forbidden Zone. "Ambassador Suna," said the six-armed council leader, "please tell us what you discovered in human space." Suna walked to the center of the chamber, where everyone could see her clearly. She took a deep breath, knowing that her next words would change the galaxy forever. "Humans are not hiding from us," she said simply. "They are protecting us." The chamber erupted in confused voices. Several representatives started shouting questions at once. The council leader had to call for order multiple times before the room became quiet enough for Suna to continue. 400 years ago, humans discovered that consciousness is not just electrical activity in brains. It is a fundamental force of the universe, like gravity or magnetism. They learned to awaken this consciousness, to expand it beyond normal limits. She gestured, and a small flower of light appeared in her palm, just as Nam Hayek had demonstrated months earlier. The chamber became completely silent. "This is not technology," she said as the flower dissolved. "This is consciousness directly, affecting reality. Humans call it awakening, and it gives them abilities we would consider impossible." Lee Hana, the council moderator, leaned forward in her seat. "Are you saying humans have become gods?" "No," Suna replied. "They have become what all consciousness can become when it understands its true nature. But the process cannot be forced. It must be chosen freely by beings who are ready for the transformation." She explained how exposure to awakened consciousness triggered changes in other beings, how humans had isolated themselves not from fear or hostility, but to prevent accidental awakenings that could destroy unprepared minds. "The ships that turned away from human space," she continued, "were not fleeing from danger. They were being gently redirected by their own expanding consciousness, which recognized they were not ready for what they would find." Kang Minho stood up. "What happened to your crew? Where are the others who went with you?" Suna's expression became sad and proud at the same time. "Dr. Choi Ji-woo chose full awakening. She is now more than she ever dreamed of being, but she can no longer exist comfortably in normal galactic society. She remains in human space, helping other beings through the transformation process. And Kim Tae-wan chose partial awakening. He returned with me, but the changes in him are significant. He can solve problems that used to take our best scientists months to figure out. He can sense the emotional states of everyone around him. He has become a bridge between awakened and unawakened consciousness." As if summoned by her words, Tae-wan entered the chamber. The representatives who had known him before gasped at the change. He looked peaceful in a way that seemed almost alien, and his eyes held depths that suggested vast knowledge. "The question," Suna continued, "is what we do with this knowledge." The chamber was buzzing with nervous energy. Some representatives looked excited, others terrified. The implications of what Suna was telling them were staggering. "Are you suggesting we all undergo this awakening process?" asked the Korth representative, his voice harsh with suspicion. "I am suggesting that we be given the choice," Suna replied. "The galaxy is approaching a crisis. Wars are coming that could destroy entire civilizations. Resources are running out. Climate change threatens dozens of worlds." She activated a holographic display showing galactic conflict zones, resource depletion charts, and environmental collapse predictions. The data was grim. "Awakened consciousness can solve these problems," she said, "but only if enough beings choose to develop it voluntarily." A new voice spoke from the chamber entrance, "Which is why we are here." Everyone turned to see a figure walking calmly down the central aisle. It was clearly human, but moved with the flowing grace that marked the awakened. The being's presence filled the chamber with a sense of peace and vast intelligence. "My name is Shin Woo-bin," the figure said as he reached the center of the chamber. "I am here as the first official human representative to address the Galactic Council in 4 centuries. The effect of his presence was immediate. Arguments that had been building between species representatives suddenly seemed less important. Complex problems appeared to have obvious solutions. Even the most aggressive council members found themselves thinking more clearly and calmly. Lee Hana struggled to maintain her composure as she felt her own consciousness beginning to expand in response to Shin Woo-bin's presence. "Why reveal yourselves now?" "Because the time for isolation has ended," Shin Woo-bin replied. "The galaxy stands at a crossroads. One path leads to destruction, war, and the collapse of civilization. The other leads to transformation, peace, and capabilities beyond your current imagination." He gestured, and the air above the chamber filled with images of human space. But not the empty territories the galaxy remembered. Instead, They saw thriving worlds where dozens of species lived together in harmony, space stations that defied physics, cities that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. "This is what awakened consciousness can create," he said. "Not through force or conquest, but through understanding and cooperation." "How many humans have undergone this awakening?" asked Minho. "All of them," Shin Wubin replied simply. "The process took 3 centuries, but every human who chose to remain in our space has awakened to some degree. Those who preferred to remain unawakened were free to leave and join other galactic civilizations." "And how many chose to leave?" Lihana asked. "Very few. When beings see what they can become, most choose growth over stagnation." The chamber was filled with representatives struggling to process what they were hearing. The idea that an entire species had transcended normal consciousness was almost impossible to accept. "What are you proposing?" asked the 6-armed council leader. "Transition zones," Shin Wubin said. "Border regions where beings can experience mild awakening effects and choose whether to continue the process. No pressure, no force, just opportunity." Suna stepped forward. "I will oversee the first transition zone. As someone who has experienced both states of consciousness, I can help others make informed choices." "And what about those who choose not to awaken?" asked the Korth representative. "They remain exactly as they are," Shin Wubin assured him. "Awakened beings are incapable of forcing change on others. The expansion of consciousness eliminates the desire to control or dominate." Taiwan spoke for the first time since entering the chamber. "I have seen both sides of this choice. Awakening is not better or worse than normal consciousness. It is simply different. But it does offer solutions to problems that cannot be solved any other way." The debate that followed lasted for hours. Some species were eager to explore the possibility of awakening. Others were terrified of losing their individual identity. A few suspected this was some kind of elaborate trap. But as the discussion continued, the presence of Shin Wubin gradually affected everyone in the chamber. Not through force or manipulation, but simply by demonstrating what peaceful, awakened consciousness felt like. Conflicts resolved themselves. Creative solutions emerged for problems that had seemed impossible. Finally, the council voted. Not unanimously, but by a significant majority, they agreed to establish the first transition zone at the border of human space. As the meeting ended, Suna found herself standing next to Shin Wubin in the now empty chamber. "Do you think it will work?" she asked. "Consciousness wants to grow," he replied gently. "We are not forcing evolution. We are simply removing the barriers that prevent it. And if some species choose to remain as they are, then they remain as they are. The galaxy is vast enough for all forms of consciousness." Suna looked out through the chamber's windows at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, beings were preparing for the greatest choice in galactic history. They could remain as they were, safe in familiar limitations. Or they could become something more, something they had never imagined possible. "The real question," Shin Wubin said softly, "is not whether they will choose awakening. The real question is whether they are ready to stop being afraid of their own potential." 3 months later, the first transition zone opened. To the surprise of many skeptics, beings began arriving immediately. Not in massive numbers, but in steady streams of individuals and small groups who wanted to experience expanded consciousness for themselves. Some chose to return home after brief exposure, carrying with them subtle changes that made them more effective leaders, scientists, and peacemakers. Others chose to stay and complete the awakening process, becoming bridges between the awakened and unawakened portions of the galaxy. But the most important change was the simplest one.